welcome to this new video for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Caro Herrera, and today I'm going to be reviewing a story called Zemindar. It's a book written by Valerie Fitzgerald, published in 1981, and it's around 800 pages long. And I would like to dedicate this video to a fellow bibliophile and friend on Instagram called Tracy A777, because I always link this book to her for reasons I shall later be mentioning. But yeah, before I begin, let me just say that this will be a spoiler-free video, so you can sit back and enjoy. I can't remember when was the first time that I heard of this book, but it couldn't have been more than 2 years ago. And my first memories of it, though I might be wrong, are talking about it with the friend that I just mentioned. But yeah, when I first learned about it, I instantly bought it. But it took me a long while to actually sit down to read it. Why, you may ask? Well, because I didn't want to. Basically because I saw it as a competition with my fifth favorite book ever, Shadow of the Moon by MMK. And this is because both stories are about British people trying to survive during the Sepoy Rebellion that took place in India in 1857, when the people of that country wanted to rebel against the British rule over them. I'll go into more of the historical details about that time period in the next section. But yeah, getting back to Shadow of the Moon, I seriously love that novel and the author, so I didn't want to read what I erroneously judged, without even having read it, to be an inferior book, and I thought that the plot of Shadow of the Moon sounded more intriguing to the one of Zemindar. Still, it all changed one day in mid-April when my friend was once again mentioning it, and since I've been in a sort of streak of reading books I've never read before, I decided that it was high time I gave Zemindar a try, hoping it was gonna be at least good, entertaining, and not that unbelievable of a historical fiction novel. And I did read some reviews of it beforehand, and they were all promising, so those are all of the reasons why I'm finally reviewing Zemindar. The events of this book are told from the point of view of the protagonist, Laura Hewitt, who is an English lady in her early 20s traveling from Europe to India for the first time ever. When we first meet her, Laura is 24, and she is a clever, mature, pretty woman who has a very vain cousin with whom she is traveling with. Laura has feelings for her cousin's husband, Charles, though, but she pines for him in silence. When this party first arrives in India, they visit different places. They make new friends. In the midst of all of this, there appears on the scene Oliver Erskine, who is the half-brother of Charles. He's quite a remarkable figure. He's a Zemindar, which means that he owns and runs this vast estate in India, and he's a sort of Byronic hero, which basically means a bad boy of English classics. He stays outside of society, living by his own rules, and he has an energetic character and a clever mind. And when he appears, he has a big impact on the lives of Laura, Emily, and Charles. And so, without giving away too much of what comes later, I'll just say that the story follows what happens to these four people as the Sepoy Rebellion takes place. The Sepoy Rebellion was like Indians' first war for independence against British rule, and we see here how a specific section of the British population in India of this time tried to survive the rebellion as they faced illness, poverty, devastation, death, betrayals, and most of all the overwhelming powers of the heart, seeing as there is a big love story added into this thrilling mix as well. I gave Zemindar a 5 out of 5 stars review and highly recommend it because it far surpassed my low expectations that I had of it. I'm so glad that it was way better than I thought it would be, and that it was constantly surprising me by this fact. If I have to choose, I still prefer Shadow of the Moon by far, if only because I felt that it covered the whole political and historical impact of it in more detail and a bit better in a wider scope, and because I prefer that love story. But yeah, they're both really good books in every respect. And I mean, just by reading Shadow of the Moon, I didn't really know that much of what happened during the siege of the Lucknow residency, which is a focus point in Zemindar. So it was really nice to get the perspective of the British victims and survivors of that particular setting. And regarding the fictional side of Zemindar, I really liked the protagonists Laura and Oliver. Although it was funny because they kept reminding me a lot of other characters in literature that I love. Oliver reminded me of this mixture between Mr. Rochester from Jane Eyre and Red Butler from Gone with the Wind. Red Butler is my favorite male character ever, because Gone with the Wind is my favorite book, story, movie, everything love story ever. But anyways, so yeah, that led me to imagine Oliver as Toby Stephens' interpretation of Heathcliff in that 2006 adaptation of Jane Eyre. And as to Laura, I pictured her as Lily James. But yeah, I really like her, but again, it's funny because at the start of the book, she reminded me of Jane Eyre, and then all of a sudden, she reminded me of Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, while she was sparring and getting to know Oliver. But then she sort of becomes her own person, but then she turns a bit too much into Scarlett O'Hara, the protagonist of Gone with the Wind, my favorite female character ever, and then she goes back to being her own character. I did find this inconsistency of her character a bit jarring. I mean, how do you begin as Jane Eyre and end up as Scarlett O'Hara? But I prefer not to mind it that much because I guess it means maybe that the author admires these female characters just as much as I do. And so it's not just an ode to them writing the character of Laura, but because she was just so influenced by these female characters that she subconsciously wrote them into her own character. And yeah, hoping all of that makes sense. I was surprised by the love story in Zemindar because it wasn't as corny as I expected. I thought that Laura was gonna be way more corny than she was. And though I am a hopeless romantic and I didn't mind that, I am content with what we get. Let's just put it like that. And in the end, I also really like the writing style of, because the author really transported me into this time period. Her writing style is really easy to read. It really flows. It's pretty. It's just the sort of book that I like when it comes to historical fiction. And I was going through a rough patch personally at the time that I was reading it in the romantic side. So it was really good to have this escape into the world of Zemindar. But yeah, anyways, Zemindar is just a thrilling ride. And while I'm not that sure just how historically accurate it is beautifully researched, and I am a journalist, so I was in awe of that at least. So yeah, I do recommend Zemindar again. For the moment, I believe though that this is all I have to say about Zemindar. Thank you so much for watching my review of it. Please let me know if you enjoyed it or not. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you did. In the description box below, you can find a link to the book's Goodreads page. Anyways, I'm Caro Herrera, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you're in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.